Hello everybody and welcome here today. I'm absolutely delighted to have here in our showcase the Belvoir team, and here to talk about Belvoir from a franchising operation. I am delighted to have with me Martin. How are you, sir? You okay?
Very well, thank you.
And you're Director of Acquisitions.
That's correct.
I'm not missing anything off here because I'm doing recruitment and property.
Yeah.
And Paul McCormick, the Acquisitions Manager for Belvoir.
How you doing?
Look at that, it's not a bad start, is it? There, we're already on the game. And what we're going to be talking about today is why would you want to join a network like the Belvoir network? And I think the first thing we need to say is we were just having a little bit of a chat off air, was that it seems to me that for as long as I can remember, and actually I don't have that bad a memory, but for almost 2008, 2009, the rise of of the franchise networks has been pretty steady and inexorable, really, hasn't it? And what I was fascinated for you said was 2009 one of the best years that you'd had.
Yeah.
What would you put that down to?
Our franchising is based upon lettings originally, and lettings has been an area where people see a steady investment, if you like.
Yeah.
And since 2009, there's been a curve upwards constantly, year on year. In fact, 2009 was the year in which we recruited more people than anywhere else on record. Right. So in adversity, our business does very, very well based upon the proposition that comes with lettings.
And sales and lettings has always been counter-cyclical as well, hasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
Sales, the estate agency or sales for people understand buying, selling houses, residential properties and so on, that's a more volatile market. That's affected by global government, the economy and so on, far more than lettings. I suppose everybody has to live somewhere. Yeah. So the availability of lettings is always at a premium.
And your rent roll is your rent roll largely, isn't it?
And everybody knows there's a shortage of property for people to rent. And
until that changes, there's not supply and demand again, isn't it?
Exactly, the simple supply and demand curve.
So that's really, really interesting. And I suppose it's easy to forget, isn't it, how many businesses went into 2008 in a really, they didn't have lettings in their kit bag, did they? And that was a brutal time, wasn't it? Nothing to power them through. The old jokes about if you want to talk to lettings, go and speak to Dorothy upstairs and everything else was less of a joke when she was paying all the wages and everything else. And there was plenty quite big agencies that really hadn't doubled down on that lettings proposition.
Well, I would say that if I've been a businessman many times over in my rather too long life. I would say if you had the opportunity of running a property business and one of them had contracted income, regular cash flows, and the other option was to have incidental sales of properties which can go up and down with a volatile market, I would take both. Given the opportunity. So, as we all know, managed lettings anyway, are contracted. They have a period of time which you're going to get an income over, and anybody who's in business will know the value of that kind of format. And
you've got some fantastic people in the business, and I'm not saying that, but obviously you got two there. But I've been pleased that over the years to know Phil G. Obviously, he looks after the Northwood arm of your business as well, haven't you? David Newton obviously looks after looks after all the tech and marketing side of things now, haven't you? And obviously, clearly, Dorian's there at the top, who knows the business well better than any, really, doesn't he? In terms of
That's right. We've got a great team. Dorian is a legend in the market, really. He's referred to by government, legislators all over the UK who want to know about the sales and lettings market, and he would probably be one of the leading brains in the business.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to have that sort of level of talent in there. Okay, so if we were to talk about then, just on that basic level, is the Belvoir proposition, is it available to all agents? Is it right for all agents? Just on a basic level, how would you answer that question?
Okay, yeah, the proposition is going to have benefit to any agents out there, and we've got two separate propositions in which we can aid ongoing businesses to become part of the franchise and really benefit from the support that we offer from compliance through to acquisition, in order to grow their current businesses under one of our brands, or for anybody that wants to get in and become a franchisee with us, and buy one of the resale opportunities that we've got. There's a number of benefits that we're happy to talk to anybody about.
And you take existing agents as well. You take people who are, I take it people who are wanting to set up in the industry, or is you go both sides there. So
yeah, absolutely. We look at people that are entrepreneurs that really, are interested in property. A lot of them are already landlords and want to expand that knowledge and become owners of lettings businesses. Or we look at people that have got ongoing estate agency businesses that are stuck for ideas on how to grow them, are perhaps confused with the compliance that's out there and feel like they're on their own and want to be part of a bigger team. Whatever the situation, there's probably some sort of benefit that we can offer to them.
well, we'll get on to the exciting bit about the acquisitions element there. But I think you just made the point that it's really pertinent. It's not hard to see why it is so. Compliance is not slowing, is it, in terms of the level of attention and auditing that's going to be going on there. So you can well imagine that somebody who wants to get on with running a business but actually needs to have the support and everything else, that would be a big tick in the box why they would come to you, isn't it?
Yeah, and we speak to agents all the time that have just struggled to keep up with the legislative changes that are going on. And of course, if you listen to what's come out of the government in the last couple of years, there's more and more on the way. Yeah. If you look at what happened in Wales just last year, major changes to legislation there. And for an agent that's busy running their business on a day-to-day basis, just trying to win business, just trying to keep turnover coming in, they really haven't got the time to often keep up with what's going on out there. Whereas we have a full team that it's their job to keep up with that, keep everybody updated.
And I mean, there were some genuinely really scary fines going around. It's not a week that goes round in EAT pie on the negotiator that somebody else is being it. And I think it's realistically that's the tip of the iceberg as well, from what I understand.
I saw that this very day in the property industry. I think it was today, there was somebody fined for some breach of the legislation or other. When you consider that you set up your own the high street as an independent, you're supposed to keep up with all these things and understand them and comply with them, and then assure yourself you haven't missed anything. That's, I'm sure, how I would be if I was on the high street. I think it's a major consideration now. I think Paul and I, how many businesses we look at a week, 10, 15 or whatever it is, of businesses that want assessing for us to acquire or may want to convert into Belvoir. And we've acquired, in the last 5 years, I think, 126 businesses into our group, in favour of the franchisees. We help franchisees buy businesses. And
that's a critical difference, isn't it, there, in terms of that ability to, you're not just helping them, giving them support for their own core business, but actually that next stage to be able to, obviously the magic happens when you can get that economies of scale with more properties being managed, isn't it? And you will facilitate that, and just that element of it is a bit of a dark art, isn't it? I mean, it's, way before that 120 odd you were talking about there, you will have become experts at it. But otherwise, people are, they're lucky if they probably do one or two of those in their business lifetime, isn't it? So you can't, a bit like moving home, isn't it? How do you become an expert in something when you've not got that level of expertise?
And when you move home, you rely on the conveyancer, the lawyer, and the estate agent or whatever it is to advise you and keep you in the straight and narrow. But of all the businesses we've looked at in the business, I don't think we found one that's 100% compliant.
No.
Now.
But that's fair. I mean, and just to be clear, you talk to any of the business transfer agents or, the Adam Walkers, and they will all tell you there's always something in there, isn't there, in the mix?
Yeah.
And, we help businesses we don't buy think about their compliance sometimes during the process. So in answer to your question, compliance is a major consideration to anybody in the property market now. Yeah. And if they ignore it, they'll be in property industry quite soon. So not in a good way.
Not because of my golf trousers, the agents giving golf day. No, that's the one to avoid, isn't it? And because of that, though, I suppose as well, that will put off that lack of expertise that people have with this, the level of compliance there, because you're dealing with this week in, week out. That does put you at an advantage. You're going to be doing more deals, and because of that, the people who are doing deals will know to come to you often there, because you're going
Well,
to be
hopefully,
in the market more often than not.
the key thing is we have a track record and we can prove what we do. So anybody who comes to us and doubts whether our set of services or what we're offering is misleading or untrue in any way, we can prove that otherwise.
Yeah.
Because we've got some really, really experienced teams, support teams to all of our franchisees. People got to understand it's not just we take you on board and there's people there you can call up. We have people who constantly support each franchise on a daily basis, business development managers who visit them regularly, talk to them about their compliance, their interest in growth, what they're doing at the minute, how they manage their staff, how they manage their branding and so on. It is their job to take the hand of one of our franchisees and lead them through their franchise tenure. So it's like the A to Z and onwards in support services.
And knowing what human beings, dare I say, people in this industry are like, some people will want all of that assistance. Some may be a little bit more sort of, you know what, actually I think I've got that bit covered. Are you able to cater for that flexibility in terms of there, or do they have to, I suppose, bend to your will would be how I kind of say it?
To a degree, there are standards that we require.
Compliance being an obvious one.
Absolutely. Branding, for example, we
Can't have people going off and doing
we can't have people just turning up and deciding to call us a WH
putting it into a pink or something like that. That won't work.
That doesn't work. There are parameters. If you're going to be a franchisee, then there are systems and processes and standards that will be expected of it. And there's a franchise agreement that you will sign to say that you will comply with the standards that we want to put forward and the terms that you become a franchisee under. So there are restrictions in being a franchisee, don't misunderstand me. But we believe that, and we hope we can prove, that the support and services we add to your business far outweigh the costs and the restrictions that go with it. So we believe the opportunity cost is well worth it.
So that's more a mentality thing, isn't it? If you are really of wanting to do all your own stuff and everything else, well, that's the independent world for you.
Absolutely,
isn't it? Yeah.
And Paul will tell you my favourite saying to new people who come on the Discovery Day with us or something like that is, if you want to do your own thing, if you want to turn left on a Monday, turn right on a Tuesday, and you're not sure you're going to do it on a Wednesday, and you want the choice of it always, don't go into franchising. It will be a car crash.
Yeah.
And the franchisor won't be happy, you won't be happy. And the ways in which we put forward to grow your business, the methodology we put forward to take your compliance, for example, forward, your marketing forward, your branding forward, just won't work.
No. And marketing brands, you just mentioned that there, that's another really important component of the support, isn't it? In terms of, you know, you've got a really, really strong brand out there. That is, we've met your team of marketing specialists. So again, they're always thinking of ways of promoting the individual brands that are out there as well in the marketplace, aren't they?
Yeah. And a lot more through social media than we did in previous years, because obviously that's become a huge part of what we do.
Course, yeah.
And the way the world works, you know, a lot of things are shared through those platforms now, and you know, the marketing team have taken that on board. They do extra sort of managed marketing for franchisees. You know, they can take over people's social platforms and really sort of drive messages out there in their marketplaces.
Literally go to the full gamut if they want to.
Yeah.
So we're not going to see a sale by TikTok anytime soon, though. Not yet, anyway. So maybe in the prop tech world, we might see that happen a little bit more. Okay, so the support element is clearly massively important there. Can we just tap into that really exciting bit again? Because that element of, if you want to come on board and ultimately everyone's looking at an exit, and I suppose wonderfully for your franchisees, there are so many people who are reaching that stage where they're looking to exit, and there aren't so many options out there, are there really? So for them to come to you guys, and you obviously working those business transfer contacts, means that you've got the ability to place, you know, a potential rent roll with one of your franchisees and kind of, well, increase what they would have done organically by a factor of years. Is that right? I mean, do you have those kind of case studies in the business where that kind of happens? Or
Absolutely. Part of my and Paul's role is to help people resell their franchises. We have a whole department dedicated to understanding what their franchise does at the moment, what their key features and benefits are, put them onto our website, for example, on our franchising, Belvoir Group franchising website, and offering it to the market for sale. We also have several platforms which we help them with as well. And we also advise them on preparing their business for sale, because sometimes you've got to be in a properly prepared state, because when the buyer comes along, he's going to expect certain information in a certain format.
Yeah.
And, you know, we need to talk to people sometimes, don't we, Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah, and and people always underestimate, don't they, both the level of detail you need to go to and the time that it takes to do that. So I know, again, talking to some of those business, you know, they start talking about 18 months or something out like that. It's not unusual to really start. And once you've got it there, it's good business acumen anyway, isn't it? Because that gives you the period to tweak some of the key metrics as well to really get it into the best possible state.
Absolutely. We buy businesses, and as I said to you, independent businesses on the market, and quite often they're not prepared for sale. You know, so we know the experience of what people would like to see, what buyers would like to see, what accountants would like to see, what funders would like to see, what lawyers would like to see, and our whole resale process caters for all of those things. We'll prepare the heads of terms for them, for example, in a format that can be passed on to a lawyer to minimise legal costs. Paul, we have all sorts of steps in our process, milestones that people need to adhere to sell their business. And it's Paul's job to see them through that process. And
because of that, the continual repeat business as well, you become trusted partners per se, as close as you can do with those, you know, with the business transfer experts. Because I know I've heard many of the times they talk there that they will say, you know, there are companies they won't deal with because of you know, 11th hour kind of negotiation and everything else, and it's just not worth their hassle, you know, getting on board. So to be able to know that the deal you've got is straight, is good, and that because you're going to want to continue doing business with these guys, again, that must be quite a lovely relationship bonus to have.
Yeah, we've known most of the major business transfer agents in the UK for years, and they've made it clear what they need, and we've made it clear what we need. So we have a great relationship, and for the most part, we can say at an early stage it's interesting to us or not.
Yeah.
And with some confidence that we can take it forward. And if I was a business transfer agent, I think that would be quite a valuable piece of information.
Absolutely would, yeah. One of the practical things I think we spoke about the last time when we were on other calls, and you were talking about that you can almost start nurturing the prospects in an area as well, won't you? Identifying for your franchisees who are some of the best targets as well, and working those.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, stuff they wouldn't be able to do or wouldn't have the time, energy ordinarily to be able to do. So again, that's a very real benefit.
Yeah, so we have franchisees coming to us on a weekly basis and saying, look, you know, we're ready to grow. We know acquisition's probably the best way forward. What can you do to help us? So we'll research their territories and we'll look at opportunities, and we'll ensure that they're viable before we even have to speak to our franchisees about them. So we do a lot of sort of the legwork that's involved in finding a good opportunity for them. And of course, from our benefit then, once we find one, we know we've got a ready, able, willing and buyer that's ready to start seriously looking at them.
Excellent. What's the bit of the job you enjoy the most? I mean, it must give you a lot of pride watching some of these people you work with grow their businesses, you know, kind of exponentially out there.
I don't think there's any better feeling than the completion days. You know, it's a long road sometimes. You know, I can tell you one acquisition that's taken me 2.5 years to bring to fruition. That's unusual, but sort of 3 to 6 months would be a fair timeline. And the day after all that hard work, communication, as far as the buyer's concerned, expense sometimes, and worry and anticipation, the day that you say the lawyer sends the note, said this is now completed, you're now the proud owner of another 500 managed properties, that's a pretty good feeling.
It is. Yeah, it must be lovely. Must be great. Yeah. One of the stats I asked your team to supply us with, which did really just blow your mind in terms of jumping out of it. And I think they said that 95% of people that join a franchise are still trading after 5 years, whereas only 20% of independent startups are still trading after 2 years. That was the NatWest franchise. So
yeah,
that's pretty
starting business, isn't it? And a statistic, that is, when I first came to Belvoir's central office, that was the first thing that smacked me in the face, to be honest, because I used to do seminars in London, at NatWest's Bank's central in Bishopsgate. And that's one of the things they put over their large presentation. And I thought, that's just truly amazing. And a bank would know. We've had both of the major banks we deal with, or three of the major banks we deal with, have told us they've never had a failure of one of our acquisition franchisee accounts since 2010. And there's thousands of them, as you might imagine. And so that statistic where independent people on the high street, if you like, have a lot of more challenges without the support that we provide, and that's the acid test, really.
It says it all, doesn't it, in terms of that? And do you think that again, going back to the basics in terms of there, because you've essentially given them the building blocks of a successful agency? I mean, what you can't do for them is get up and actually do the work, is there? But every other element of it, you can see it working in so many different markets around the country. So that takes away the excuse factor, doesn't it? Well, my area is different to everybody else. You can see that the systems and the software and the technology that you guys back often are really preferential rates, isn't it? I mean, they make in Kerfuffle world, sort of a bit. Envious in terms of how good and that only increases, doesn't it, as the branch network increases. Those opportunities and benefits for the franchisees also comes back in spades.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, isn't it, Bob?
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose if you got to the nub of the proposition, if you like, we don't do it for nothing. We charge a fee for providing these services, but we've got to prove to you that if we charge you this amount of fee, it's worth it in what we provide for you in services. And I think if you went out to the high street and tried to buy those same services, it costs you an awful lot more money.
Yeah, but it's got to be a win-win, hasn't it? As you said, ultimately, at the end of the day, you're not the charity, but as those guys grow their rent rolls, as they grow their businesses, of course, you benefit, they benefit. So that you're both heading in the same direction and looking for those opportunities to make it work, aren't we? That's where it should be fully aligned, really.
Yeah, and being a franchise, often they're coming in and they're joining a business that they don't need to make mistakes. A lot of people, when they start a business, they're learning from their mistakes. They don't have to learn from mistakes. All those have already been learnt. They just need to follow a clear path that's got a history of success. So that's probably why that ratio of franchise businesses performing and staying afloat much on a higher ratio than independents is there, because as long as you follow the success path that others have followed within the organisation, then as long as you've got motivation and some enthusiasm, then you shouldn't go wrong.
Perfect. Is it fair to say, not you guys, because you've obviously out there practicing what you preach, is it fair to say we've been slow in this country to really take to franchises? Because if you look at, I know a little bit about the Australian and American markets, and in Australia in particular, much higher percentage, isn't there, of franchise groups per se in there? What do you put that down to? Is that a particular British peculiarity?
Yeah. I hasten to criticise my nation, but
don't worry, we want to get you out here.
No, I think there is a certain fear of franchising, and I think perhaps from 2009 onwards, 10 perhaps, that gradually sort of changed colour. Maybe people looked across the Atlantic and saw how franchising is a massive business in the United States and Australia, as you say, and the trust level of delivering a viable business has sort of grown with that proving the pudding, if you like.
Yeah. But you've had a free run at it, I suppose, is the flip side of that largely, haven't you, in terms of...
Well, it's a win-win situation, which you just said. If we don't succeed, if you don't succeed, we don't succeed.
Yeah.
Because we rely on you to grow your business in order to pay the fees that we want from people in form of royalties.
Yeah.
So that, I think, was the first mistrust. Once people learn that it's a value for money proposition, so you're basic decision when you go into any franchise, and not just property franchising, is if I pay this guy, this company, these people for what they say they can deliver to me,
Yeah.
X amount of money, how much more value will that add to my business?
Yep.
That's the only decision you ever have to make, really.
Yeah.
You have to do some due diligence first. Look behind the business. Do they have the support team to do what they say they're going to do? Is the accredited brand the brand that they say it is, and does it have the recognition and so forth? So once you do your due diligence, you make the decision that if I do this, it's going to cost me X,
Yeah.
and I will get Y from it. Then franchising is a simple formula to follow. But I think you're quite right. In the early days, that was a formula that was mistrusted until they saw the evidence of other countries doing the same thing. So I think it's growing and growing. I suppose in 2014, a lot of people said to me, is the value of a franchise business on the market the same as an independent business for sale on the market? And I had to think twice before I answered that then.
I was going to stumble in there and try and make a guess, but then I always get it wrong. And what did you say?
I would have, I said at the minute, if I was to look at the hard numbers, probably not. And that's because people misunderstand franchising. Since that time, however, when we've been able to prove the statistics you just said, people surviving 5 years over 2 years and so on, and recognised institutions publish annual reports to prove it, that kind of kudos, if you like.
There's got to be a tick in the box in terms of probity, isn't there? You know these guys largely will be doing the right thing. Yeah, okay, that does make sense. And so, if we were looking at and trying to summarise this out, we're talking about there. What would you say that if you had to prioritise the 3 USPs in the business? Clearly, that ability to help grow their business from your, let's be honest, you two are quite biased on this side of things, with that, and obviously, and rightly so, because that's where all the the excitement happens. So that's anywhere. What else would it be? Would it be the support with the other business units within the business as well?
Yeah, there's three tenets, isn't there? There's first off, there's the brand and the recognition.
Yep.
The second is the support you get from joining our franchise or other franchises, and the third is the compliance and safety that you have with being able to operate your business. So, if you have the confidence of those 3 items and you decide that you're going to go into the property world in this case, then I think you probably put them at the top of your priority, so to speak, because if you can't be sure that the services you've got can help you comply with what is required, meet the market you want to do, and they can then grow going forward with confidence and understanding, then you're probably going to be fairly much without a pattern until you've got a stiff learning curve.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying there aren't independent businesses out there who've been launched and are very, very successful. And I admire the independent owners who have done that, but they'll tell you it's been a steep slog.
They've got that look in their eyes that you could show they've been through it.
But many of them sell to us because they're exhausted. But I hats off to those people that do that, because it's not easy in this market.
It's fascinating, isn't it, really? You've seen the online agents come in and they went for they probably thought quite clever, let's have a proper traditional agency, and they, the e-moves or whatever else it was, the death, and there's never been that kind of that competition between the franchises there. You are all largely in the same boat, aren't you? Still doing the right stuff, the same values, I suppose, there. You've just chosen a slightly different model to achieve that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I've got a little bit of a surprise. This is where normally people go running at this stage. So just, but it did come out of the hat just yesterday. We did our first the Kerfuffle Awards for 2022. And for anyone noticing, we are, just to place it, we are in March, so it did take me a while to put together the results, but then people know I'm not a detailed person. And I'm really, really pleased to tell you that you guys, actually, let us go in reverse order. So second was Mr. and Mrs. Clark, who of course is your sister organisation on that side of things. But in first place, Belvoir for franchising.
Excellent. Good news. Wow.
Now, as in your normal Simon Well fashion, I don't have a couple or anything like that. So it's a completely other thing. But look, the important thing about this is we're the only people that give away awards based on the reviews that are given day in, day out across the 365 days of the year, and also from the dashboards that we have where agents, and so in this case it'll be your franchisees, are saying, you know, how they feel about existing supplier stroke partners. Of course, you really are. So I think, you know, congratulations, you know, ultimately it's delivering in terms of what you're, you know, it's always nice when what we've been talking about is clearly being delivered in spades.
Well, you know, seeing the conversation we just had and hearing that news, it's kind of very gratifying, and it's proof, if you like, that what we do is appreciated and they're not disappointed in what we provide for them. So that's really, really good news. Thank you.
Good stuff. No worries at all. We'll get your bauble whenever we get around to actually doing it. And just on that, I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because Mr. and Mrs. Clark, as we said, they were kind of brought in for that different part of the market, the more individualistic, I suppose. Would you say it's a bit like more the American or Australian model, isn't it? The brokerage model. So that fits perfectly into your organisation, so that whatever anybody wants, which way they want to go down, you can say, actually, in this case, you've got Belvoir on this side of traditional business units, and on that side we've got Mr. and Mrs. Clark. Absolutely,
and we knew by inquiries that we've had, historic information and data, that people do ask for that kind of opportunity. So it's incumbent on us to find something that could do that. And we acquired Mr. and Mrs. Clark for that very reason, so that anybody who wants to come into our property franchise has all the options on the table they might be interested in following.
Perfect. Well, look, yeah, fantastic, isn't it? It's great to see that you've, you know, again, flexing the model, staying ahead of the curve, and that's what it's all about. Guys, thanks very much. For people that want to know more, of course, guys, as usual, go to Belvoir and kerfuffle.com, see further information there. There's a contact us, or it's okay to give your emails out, I believe, Jansen, there.
Please
you can go to martin.bunny, BUNNEY, at belvoirgroup.com, or paul.mccormack at belvoirgroup.com, and drop the guys. And suppose, can we just finish off with that one then? What's the process? Do they literally just say, look, I'm interested, and then you jump on a call with them and you kind of discuss where they're at?
It's pretty much that simple, Paul, yeah?
Yeah, all confidential. So, you know, we can have an informal conversation, see where the land lies, and move forward from there.
And when these things progress at pace, what are you looking at? Does it normally take place over a series of months? Is it weeks? What's the timescales for becoming part of Belvoir once somebody wants to make the decision?
The time frame is different depending on where they are in the journey. Some people will come with an inquiry like to see, and other people will be, you know, ready and willing to go from there. So everybody's experience is slightly different. Yeah.
It's the classic. I always ask that question: how long's a piece of string? And then realise I regret it afterwards. But it obviously makes perfect sense. Gents, fantastic. Learned a lot more about it today. Thank you for spending the time, and catch up soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.